So these are the boards you've received. How do you think they were made? What machines were used? Before a machine was used, I had to figure out what distortions there were or warps within the board. As you can see right now, it's high on the end but flat in the middle on a flat surface. So there's no space, no gap right there. But if I flip this board over, there's a little space back there, so you can see the change is throughout the board. I'm looking for the greatest warp, and that's what I'm going to work around. So when I flip the board over, you can see there's a big hump right in the middle. That means the ends of the board are touching the ground, but the face in the middle of the board is in the air. That's called a bow. When I look from this angle, I actually see a cup. I see that the edges on one side are lower on one side than the other, creating a rounded top. That's called the cup. When I'm putting this piece of board or stock in the machine to be surfaced, I need to make sure that the distortions are placed in the proper orientation. So in this case, the cup with the highest part on top. So when I put the board in the machine, I want it directly in the middle because that's usually for the bow the highest point, and then I want the cup as well with the highest point on top. Once I'm ready, I turn the dust collector on. I'm going to now make sure I set the height of the surface planer. To do that, notice I'm moving the board back and forth. I'm raising the bed, which is the part that says Powermatic on it, until the board can't move. Once that's done, I lower the bed, take the board out, and then I'm going to do 2 turns to replace where the bed's supposed to be before I begin. The noise you just heard is the dust collector. Once I'm ready, I'm going to hit the green button to start, let the machine come to full speed, and then I'm going to make sure the board is flat on the table as it runs through. The first time it might not automatically feed, but there are automatic feeders in there so that I could be doing this on my own. The cutter head has multiple bits. Usually it's 3 to 4 rows of blades, but in this case we have smaller bits on 3 to 4 rows. And notice I rotate it 1 rotation before I feed the board through. On this machine, 1 rotation is a 1/16 of an inch. So the max you would go is an 1/8 of an inch, and that's taking off a lot of material at once. We really want to do a 1/16 of an inch at a time. Sometimes I even do less than that. So instead of a full turn, sometimes I'll only do half a turn or a quarter of a turn, depending on the board that I'm doing. So when I run it through and it does surface every time, I do 1 rotation on this case because it's pine, and then I let it feed. As the machine is taking material off the board, you will hear that noise. That's what you heard in the beginning before, and you'll hear more of it. The more material it's taking off, the louder that noise will be. So listening to the machine is a very important part. When the board is being placed into the machine, never stand directly behind it or directly in front of it. That's the kickback zone, so always stand to the side of it. If it hits those rails on the side, the silver part, that's what guides the board to stay within line of the blade. So if you notice there, some is surfaced, some is not. The portion that is surfaced, or as it's doing this process, it's making 2 side surfaces. So once I finish one side, I'm going to flip the board over and work on the other side. This is creating a rough board, making it S2S, surfaced on 2 sides. The next step then would be going to the jointer so that I can have all 4 sides, and that means 2 faces and then 2 edges surfaced. When all 4 sides are surfaced, that's called S4S. So when you're going to the lumberyard or ring's ends, these are terms that could be found or heard. Do you want the board S2S? Do you want the board S4S? And as you're asking for S4S, the price will increase. So rough lumber, of course, would be the cheapest because it's just milled lumber straight out, and you have to do the work to surface it with the surface planer and the jointer. When surfacing, there are limitations to the board. For example, you shouldn't be surfacing anything less than 3/8 of an inch thick. For lengthwise, how long the board is, that is determined by the machine itself. It's usually the machine's depth plus 3 inches, so that you don't put your hands inside the machine to push the board out. Once again, never put your hands inside that spacing between the bed. The bed is the thing that has the Powermatic word on it, and the top portion where the cutter head is found. For the width of the board, that is also determined by the machine. The widest portion, as you can see here, between those silver knobs that are sticking out of the board, that's the widest that machine can take for a board. So you have to look at the machine and its manual or even safety regulations. Once both sides are surfaced, you turn the machine off and wait for it to come to a complete stop.